All right, Debbie, over to you.
Love it. So,
Good morning, everyone. This is Debbie Wetzler. I'm sorry my video is not working. So my apologies, but it's my pleasure to bring on a person that many of you might know, but many of you might not know. His name is Dr. Dan Hartley, and he joined ASEA many years ago, about 14 years ago. And he has great connections um, with the redox world and with this and with the beginnings of ASEA. He was a podiatrist. He went to school with Dr. David Silverman, and then he went off and did clinical research. So he's worked for several pharmaceutical companies doing a lot of research and a lot of background research in many different areas. But I would like him to tell you kind of a little bit about his background and what he was doing when ASEA was getting started. So, Dr. Dan?
Good morning, Debbie. Pleasure to be here. Thank you. Yeah, I got interested in clinical research back before I ever went to podiatry school. I was working for another doctor. I wasn't a doctor at the time, but was working at NIH on ACE inhibitors for blood pressure before they were ever even approved by the FDA. And that's what got me interested in clinical research. Eventually, I ended up going to podiatry school where David and I went together. We were in the same class, and then we each went along and did our own residency programs. I stayed in Chicago for 2 years and did mine there, and he, I think, I'm not. I have to ask him where he went. I forgot. It's been so long, but. So we stayed in touch over the years. I practiced for about 9 years. Was the only person in town of about 50,000 people, and I worked many hours a day. And my wife and I started to have children, and I never got to see my kids. They were in bed when I went to work, and they were in bed when I got home. So was looking for a little bit of a different quality of life and got involved back in clinical research. And so for the last 32 years before I retired this last year, I worked on all different kinds of studies from cancer to you name it, everything. And uh, David introduced me to the technology in ASEA back when it was just a liquid. There were no other products back then. And I fortunately had a little bit of history with redox signaling molecules because one of the pharmaceutical companies where I worked, and I worked as a consultant for them, actually, for those of you who have seen the Genesis video, and you've seen that corporate jet in the hangar, those were my bosses from Bar Pharmaceuticals, and so I had some history with it, and we were studying several different disease entities back then, and other labs around the country and the world were too. They were looking at things like irritable bowel syndrome and cystic fibrosis, multiple sclerosis, COPD, diabetes. Those were all things that we were looking at for these molecules because of what they do at the cell level. And the problem is that we couldn't make them bioactive in the body once they were exposed to room temperature in the atmosphere. They would denature and go back to salt water in about 10 or 15 minutes. So it's hard to do clinical studies when you have salt water. But I was introduced to ASEA. I had the great fortune of flying out to Salt Lake City and meeting with Virtus. What a great man he is. And and also the scientist who did the majority of the work in stabilizing the redox signaling molecules, and Dr. Samuelson, and uh, had a nice meeting with them. They were interested in my history. To make a long story short, I could not move to Salt Lake City because my wife was the chief of anesthesia here where we live, and we weren't. I wasn't going to pull everybody to Salt Lake City, but um, that's what happened. I got introduced to it. I was pretty skeptical about the fact that they could um, stabilize the molecules back then, and I started drinking it. But the real kicker for me was I noticed some skin things happening with me, and I think David used me as a guinea pig as he was getting started. But I called him one morning. I was in a hotel, had just flown into another city for a different clinical trial we were doing, and the weekend before I flew out to that city, I had burned my or had a burn injury on my finger. I had touched an oven rack while I was cooking a pizza and had a pretty significant wound on my index finger that I dipped my finger in a glass jar that was filled with ASEA, and within minutes noticed some visible changes to what was going on with my finger. And I called David, and I told him, "Wow, I think this might be real, and I think we need to get going on this." And that was my introduction, Deb.
Exactly. And you thought, I know you were having some discomfort while you were playing golf to begin with, and you thought maybe that was just a placebo and that went away. Is that correct?
Yes, I have a bad golf swing.
Um, so after you realized they were stabilized and stuff, you started telling some people about it, and you were seeing some real differences in people. Uh, some very good friends, and I know one was actually in the military and stuff. Without, going too much into what was happening, can you explain what some of the things you first saw, um, especially with Steve?
Well, he had a very significant health challenge, systemic. He was exposed to Agent Orange in Vietnam, and he 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 was a mess. He couldn't even walk up his stairs, and we introduced it to him, and he faithfully took it, and he noticed quickly results. It it didn't take long for him to be able to walk up his stairs, and that was a huge monumental thing for him at that time. Um, and so yeah, Steve was that I Steve was kind of my first miracle.
Yes.
But there were others as time went on, and that some not as profound, but we definitely saw changes and improvements in health issues that people were having, and so it was just amazing. The bad part about it for me was that we got a lot of people involved right away. Um, the bad part, the negative part for me was that I was not good at teaching them about detox at the time, teaching them about staying on the product for at least 3 months. I think four is better. Um, but it was new to everybody, kind of new to everybody back then, and um, people who had been in other companies knew about detox things. I had never been in another network marketing company, but uh, and I at the time I was so busy with my other work, it was hard to be on calls a lot during the day and go to meetings and things. We did that in the beginning. We did it for a couple of years, and I really enjoyed it. It was wonderful. It kind of I always tell people that are not medical professionals, when you introduce this to people and you see the health changes that they have, it's the same feeling we get when we do surgeries that are successful, or we help someone with an injury or a fracture or whatever it was, and they get better and they thank you. Uh, um, the only difference is we paid a lot of money to go to medical school to get be able to be in a position to receive those accolades of thank yous. But here, you all get to do that for just being involved with ASEA. So,
Yes. That's many of us who've been in for a long time have had many watershed moments with this technology. And I know Steve was a very fast one, but I know you had another really good friend named Marty who um, she didn't feel anything for almost 3 months. And finally, she said it was like the light bulb came on, and when she flicked a switch, and she woke up one morning feeling wonderful after having some severe health issues also. So you and I were learning together when we first got started about
yeah.
how these products work and stuff. Um, because you are medical, do you have a lot of people that ask for um, uh, longevity studies, or not longevity, but ones that have been done over time, to show the efficacy of ASEA? And what do you say to them if they do ask you that, if they are
Well,
medical or analytical?
yeah. Uh, Back then, it was a lot more difficult because
Mhm.
you didn't have what you have now. But the tools that ASEA has now, and the studies that have been done by third-party labs around the world, uh, to be frank, as I've come back into the fold here in the last 3 or 4 weeks. I guess I can tell that part of it after I answer this. But yeah, it's they're out there, and I've been diving into the papers, and it's just amazing to me, the gene uh, expression pathways uh, that you have clinical scientific research proof about, and validation that all these things that we thought and knew before, but it's been validated now. So that's amazing. I it's funny, as I came back into this a couple nights ago, my wife and I were sitting in the living room, and I'm kind of I haven't been on Facebook ever, and I haven't ever downloaded an AI program, but she had AI on her phone, and she was introducing me to that, and I started asking the AI program questions about different pathways that are mentioned in some of these research papers, like the EGR1. How does it affect the NRF2, which is attached to the KEAP1? Uh, and I started getting all these absolutely incredible answers from AI about these things. If any of you are listening to this and you need another tool, just go delve into AI, because it's all there. And I even asked the question, I didn't name names. I said, who was it that stabilized redox signaling molecules? And he, the answer is Dr. Gary Samuelson. And it goes into detail about that, and the people involved with Virtus and the research group. And I was sitting there, just my jaw was, I couldn't believe all the things, the answers that I was getting from just asking AI questions about what is happening with uh, the research that's been done, and validation. So, can I tell you how I came back?
Absolutely.
It's your fault, Deb.
I
Um,
know.
I My wife learned. My wife's very skeptical. She's the chief of anesthesia at the hospital where we live. She's retired now, but um, she's always been skeptical, except for when she hears stories about how people are getting better. But just in general, especially at the beginning, very skeptical. And uh, but one thing she did learn during the 6 years that I stepped away from ASEA was she learned the beauty of residual income, and we got paid every week by ASEA for not doing anything other than supplying it to some family members and friends here in town. But we got paid every week, and the the thing that brought me back was there was a week of almost well, a little over a month ago where I got my check was twice as big as normal, and I called you, Debbie, to see why, and then you proceeded to tell me about Sia Gold. And during that discussion, you mentioned NRF2 pathway, and for pain. We've been looking at that for several different disease entities, and I said, okay, I've got to get this and try it, and I did. I put it on an ankle. I had ankle surgery on a torn tendon years ago. That's always been a little nagging problem when I walk. Not bad, but it's always there. And and my shoulder, I had a labrum issue and a rotator cuff issue that I had procedures done on, and I put it on both of those areas, and the pain went away. And I said, okay, I I I need to refocus here because I retired last year, and I had just 2 weeks earlier, before I called you, Debbie, I told my Debbie that a guy can only play so much golf, and 3 or 4 times a week of golf gets to be a little too much, especially when you got a bad shoulder. Uh, and then this happened, and it's just I it was meant to be. That's all there is to it. So I'm not going away again.
Good. We need you and your expertise in ASEA until the word is out everywhere in the world, basically. Um, I was wondering if anyone had, if we could open it up, and if anyone had a question for Dr. Dan, if anyone would like to do that. Oh, we still have just a few minutes.
Can I say,
Dr. Dan, it's Bob Hayak. How are you?
hi, Bob, how are you?
Very, very good. I'm not sure how you're going to be able to answer this, but I have a neurological issue that my father had, and I was diagnosed in 2009. And I have about 25 what they call lesions on the brain, and which
Do they
treated.
do they start with the letter L?
Did they start? Yes.
Okay.
And I started treatment in 2009. And when I found ASEA in 2020, things started to change back. Is there a chance that those L's could be reversed?
Well, there's always the possibility, Bob. As you probably know, if you're involved and you're on this call, you've been involved with ASEA for quite a while. There's a significant uh, event that cells go through as they die, and it's called apoptosis. And cells are replacing themselves. Dead cells are replacing themselves with new cells. So my answer to that would be there's always the possibility. Have you been reevaluated? Have they checked it out?
Yeah, well, I have. Unfortunately, the technicians are somewhat lazy. They don't like to count. So I just get a reading that, yeah, multiple L's in certain areas, and then the diagnosis.
How do you feel?
I feel like I did before I got hit. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm just, it really, really, it's amazing. It really, what it's done. I mean, the medication was killing me for one. It destroyed my liver, destroyed my kidneys, so, and then the medication for the L's was starting to make me sick. So I went back to the neurologist and said, look, everything is reversed. Everything's back to normal. And now this medication's making me sick. I feel like my body's telling me I don't need it. And they sort of agreed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they said, we'll take pictures every once in a while. And as long as you stay good, we're good. And I said, I probably will be.
That's wonderful. Glad to hear it.
Are you doing any more studies on that?
I'm retired
Uh-huh.
personally. I know there's work out there for sure that is being done. One of the things that I worked on, one of my last studies that I was working on was for there's a group of doctors that have actually think they have a cure for ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, and so I got involved with that. And one of the one of the sad things about coming back to ASEA was when I heard about what happened with Dr. Rob Ward. Um, I had gotten I had gotten kind of close to him way back when, and that was pretty sad.
Mm-hmm.
But what they're doing is they're injecting certain substance that they think is going to work into the brain, and they're starting to test different extremities, and it's going to be a slow process. But this is going back to your question about what's going on. There are amazing things going on in research right now, and uh, 10, 15 years from now, it's going to be even better. Unfortunately, I'll be 85 then.
But you'll still be alive and healthy, and
Yeah, I'll be
that's
taking a CS. So,
exactly.
Absolutely. Well, I thank you for your time.
oh, you bet. Good talking to you.
You too.
Dr.
Any more?
Dan,
Yeah, go ahead.
quick question. Do you have any plans on doing any teachings from your experiences and where you can see this going in the future?
Um, when you say teachings, what are you referring to with?
Like Zoom,
Oh,
like stuff like this, Zoom classes for ASEA, or just
possibly.
sharing some of your experiences that are motivational.
I'm open to anything. I'm so new at getting back to this. I've only been back not even a month, really. But uh, I guess to answer your question is I'm open. I got the pleasure of being interviewed by Danielle Matthews last week, and she's got a great YouTube channel that the difficulty for me will if I did something like that, it's so hard for me to stay compliant. I got to catch and really watch what I'm saying, and sometimes I get in trouble with my big mouth. But I guess the answer is probably maybe.
You.
I'd have to learn the technology too. I don't know. I watch David and Danielle work with their Vimeos and their cameras, and Debbie Wetzler, and uh, there's a lot I'd have to learn before I could be able to do that.
I'll put the link for Danielle Matthews' interview with him if you'd like to see it. And someone asked the question, Dan, how can someone get redox into the brain for someone with brain issues? Would you like to answer that?
Well, yeah, there are two ways you could drinking it, number one, because the redox molecules go everywhere. And one of the things that Rob Ward taught me a long time ago was that the molecules have some kind of innate intelligence to go where they're really needed. And a lot of times we don't know where that is in the body, but you may have issues with say a GI issue, stomach issue, and the molecules go to fix something in your liver and concentrate there, and their intelligence seems to work on certain areas and then move to another area. I thought that was pretty fascinating. But so drinking, and also when these do cross the blood-brain barrier, so that's an amazing thing right there. And I would think that using the Renew 20, the gels, either one, even though they're not going to get through the cranium, but it wouldn't hurt.
I have a question before we go for everyone, but also this gentleman I've never just met. But I have a half-hour meeting with the governor of our state of Indiana, who's a friend of mine, here in 2 days. And I'm just trying to put together what I should spend that half an hour on. So if anybody has any wisdom they'd like to get it to me, I'd love to hear it. But since you're on the phone or on the call, sir, I'd love to hear what you might tell me that I ought to share with him.
Well, not knowing if he has a science background at all, I guess if you could explain how we have these molecules in our body, and as we get older, we lose some of the functionality and the numbers of them. And the other thing that I would try to get across to someone like that would be that these molecules, back when I went to medical school, we thought these molecules were just a byproduct of the Krebs cycle. And as years went on, the scientists discovered that these molecules are what regulate the Krebs cycle and what regulate all of the gene pathways that are happening in the cells in our body. This is what regulates them. There are a couple of other molecules, excuse me, that aren't in the salt and water that's in ASEA that are also considered redox signaling molecules, like nitrogen. People take nitric oxide, and those are also redox signaling molecules. But this product is sodium chloride, hydrogen, and oxygen, and different combinations of those molecules. And if he's interested, you could get him materials. You only have a half hour, so.
Yeah, well, I introduced. He's a friend of mine and went to my alma mater. So he, I've introduced this to him a couple of years ago. But he has a company that his kids run now that's $70 million a year, and so he held the line on healthcare costs for 16 years at that company, and he's wanting to bring innovation to Indiana, and not only he at the governor level, but also my mayor here locally, and so. I asked AI what AI said I should ask questions just for fun the other day. That was remarkable what I got there. And I've got some other materials, and I reached out to Frank Santoya, but you guys have an unbelievable amount of boots on the ground wisdom here. So I just wanted to get your take.
Yeah. I hope I answered it for you. It would be tough to do everything in a half hour, but with the AI, you seem to be an expert with that. I'm just learning about it, but it's amazing.
Hey, Kyle, this is Dr. Walker. What you might talk to him about is how much less expensive it is to address health issues early on and at the cellular level, and than it is to wait until people get so sick that almost nothing works, and talk about the kind of the global effectiveness of improving the body's redox environment as a way to help your body to improve your health. It's just a lot more cost effective, and politicians always like to save money, and this is certainly a great way to address a lot of the health crises that we have in a much more cost effective way.
Thank you, Dr. Walker, I'll say.
So Debbie,
Yeah.
we're at the bottom of the half hour.
Yeah.
I'm sure we could go on for days, but maybe we should wrap it up here.
Yes. I want to thank Dr. Dan for being on. He does have a world of expertise with this, and you'll be hearing again from him, which I put in the chat. On April 5th, he will be on the REDOX 5 with Dr. Osler and Dr. Maureen Hayes. So you can stay tuned, and he might be able to say a little bit more on there. So thank you, Cindy, for helping run this and for your expertise. And thank you so much, Dr. Dan, for being on, taking time
Thank
this
you.
morning.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Dr. Dan.
Yeah, welcome back. Big time.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Great to see your face.
Well,
You
welcome everyone.
too.
Today I'm joined by
Thanks
Dr.
so much, Dan.
Okay.
And
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.